Happy to see you, Jenny. Thank you for joining. We're giving it 1 or 2 more minutes so that everybody can join us. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you feel like it, or to choose an emoji reaction either from the control panel or by typing the emoji in our chat. Hi, Mary. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi, delighted to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I hope I'm not late.
Nice to see you, Philip. And
All right. Thank you.
we'll give it 1 more minute as people are still. Really great to see all the smiley emojis and funny emojis in the chats. Shall we get started? And people can continue to join us. Okay, Laia, if you can please move on to the next slide. Great. Again, it's really nice to see so many familiar names. Thank you so much for joining us in the first, the first out of this new event series, Login and Learn. We wanted to change our alumni events a little bit. And for some of you, there may have been some changes to the team. So we'll do a quick round of introductions. My name is Diana Kakebeke, and I'm leading the Care Climate and Resilience Academy. I'm calling in from the Netherlands, as well as Nadia Rinaldi, who is our climate learning officer. Lee, would you quickly want to introduce you?
Yes, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're from. My name is Leigh Fuentes. I'm based in the Philippines, and I'm the Care Climate Justice Center Climate Communications and Knowledge Management Officer. Over to you, Laia.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Good day. I'm Laia. I'm the Climate and Resilience Academy intern for this season, and I'm controlling the slides. So if anything goes wrong, forgive me. And I hope you all enjoy the session very much.
Thank you. Can you please go to the next slide, Laia? So yeah, we wanted to start by letting you know that the Academy is on its 5th year. We started with a pilot learning journey 5 years ago, exactly. Well, I think in October, so soon. And it's just so exciting that we're still around, that people are still interested in joining us for our learning journeys, that they access our self-paced courses. And yeah, we're just very happy to celebrate this year. Laia, please go to the next slide. And for those of you who don't know, we will be starting the 6th iteration of the Climate Change Adaptation Learning Journey on the 30th of September. If you're interested, or if you know of somebody else who might be interested, join us, please let them know, because you can still register until September 16th. And I think by scanning the QR code, you can learn more. And again, feel free to share, because of course, many of you have already participated in our learning journeys, but we would love to welcome more people. All right, Laia. We're very, very excited and honored to be joined by two guest speakers today, Carla Hansen and Dr. Bernardino from Life Haven Center for Independent Living, which is a nonprofit organization in the Philippines of persons with disabilities. And again, they are our guest speakers today and will share more about the intersection of disability, climate change, and climate justice. And without further ado, I would like to pass it to Carla and Dr. Yoon Bernardino.
Thank you, Diana. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'm Carla Henson from Life Haven Center for Independent Living. So today, I will be talking about the intersection of climate change, climate justice, and disability. Maybe it's a new topic or a new subtopic of climate change, but I hope you will learn something from us today. So we'll be covering the following topics. Next slide, please. We'll start with a warm-up quiz. It's not graded, so don't worry. We'll talk about disability, the impact of climate change and disasters on persons with disabilities, the 4 pillars of disability inclusive development, and preconditions to disability inclusion. And we'll wrap up with a Q&A afterwards. So next slide, please. So, okay, let's start with a warm-up quiz. I'll be asking you a question. It's flashed on the screen, and then you just need to type your answers on the chat box. So the first question is, what percentage of the global population are persons with disabilities? Is it 5%, 10%, 15%, or 20%? Doc June?
Answers are coming in now. The first one, I think Jennifer wants to be very exact or close to the exact percentage. 16%, the others are 10%, 20%. Now coming in 15%, couple of 10%. Ecosystem Sustainability Network said, I'll pick 20%.
Right. So the latest number is 16%. That's the most accurate one. But for this part, we will accept 15% because that's the option that we provided. So for those who answered 15% and 16%, congratulations, your answers are correct. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the next question is, what percentage of those persons with disabilities live in the global south? Is it 60%, 70%, 80%, or 90%? Dr. June?
First one, Robert, 60%. Aisha said 60% also. Jennifer and Elena. Jennifer, 80%. Elena from Cape, 60%. The others are still thinking. How many? From Beatrice, 80%.
Okay, so for those who answered 80%, that is the correct answer. So 80% of persons with disabilities live in the global south. Next slide, please.
And one celebrated.
Yay, congratulations. Next question, up to how many times are persons with disabilities more likely to die in a natural disaster compared to persons without disabilities? Is it half, 0.5 or half? 2 times more likely, 3 times more likely, or 4 times more likely?
Four times, 3 of them. One from steps. Step is 3 times. Beatrice 4 times. Aisha 3 times. Robert Otin 3 times.
The correct answer is wait, I can't. It's 4 times more likely for persons with disabilities to die from a natural disaster compared to persons without disabilities. All right, next slide, please. What percentage of persons what percentage of persons with disabilities do not have an individual preparedness plan for disasters? Is it 43%, 56%, 71%, or 86%?
Okay, I have answers now, 86, 56, 86, 86, 86, 86. I think 86%. It's winning. Yeah.
All right. So it's not
Unfortunately,
86%. It's 71%. All right. For the next slide, please. What percentage of persons without this, what percentage of persons with disabilities have no one to help them to evacuate when disaster strikes? So is it 5%, 8%, 13%, or 19%?
is what is interesting from Jennifer. I don't even think I personally have an individual plan. That's something we need to develop now, personal plan. So numbers coming in now are 13%, 19, 19, 13, 8%, 19.
For those who answered 13%, you're correct. Next slide, please.
I'm sure they have reason to give those numbers, the other numbers. Yeah, back to you, Carla.
Next slide. What percentage of persons with disabilities have not participated in community disaster management and risk reduction processes? Is it 40%, 55%, 70%, or 85%?
Click on the draw is Beatrice, 40%. From Aisha, 55. Jennifer, 70%. Robert said 55. I am 70%. Barnett, 70%. This is interesting. Okay, I think different names are answering. Different individuals are sending their answers. Not just a few, but you have different people trying to give that, to hit the correct answer. Okay, the last 3, 7%.
Surprisingly, nobody answered. The correct answer is 85%. So 85% have not participated in any preparedness management or risk reduction planning or disaster planning or management. That's 85%. Next slide, please. What percentage of persons with disabilities say that they would be capable of evacuating immediately in the event of a sudden disaster? Is it 11%, 16%, 20%, or 30%?
This time would be capable of evacuating immediately.
Yes.
Okay, 11%, 16%. From Robert, 16. From Steph, 11. Okay.
Right. So the answer is 20%. So 20% of them can evacuate immediately. So those are all the questions that I have for you now, but I'm not going to discuss all of the details about those numbers. The purpose of that quiz is for you to think about the situation of persons with disabilities when it comes to disaster or the impact of climate change on persons with disabilities. We know that there are many persons with disabilities out there, that's 15 to 16%. We have seen through the data how they are affected, how unprepared they are, how policies or programs are not inclusive of them. So these are the things I want you all to think about when you're doing your climate related initiatives, may it be research, programming, projects, activities. So all the references are there. We will be sending you a copy of this presentation so you can check also the references and read some more about persons with disabilities and their situation. So next slide, please. So for this slide, I just want to provide a simple explanation of what disability is. So there is the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It's a convention for persons with disabilities stating the rights of persons with disabilities. Although this convention does not add any human rights to persons with disabilities. It's the same human rights. The CRPD is just making sure that these rights are inclusive and accessible for persons with disabilities. So, according to the CRPD, persons with disabilities include those with long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in the society on an equal basis with others. So I would like you to spotlight on the two terms, the term impairment and barrier. So these are the two important things to consider when we are thinking about disability. It's not just about impairment. There has to be a barrier that interacts with that impairment to have that disabling environment. So for disability to be present, there has to be an impairment plus a barrier that is interacting and hindering the participation of that person. So that is disability. So let me explain this more on the next slide. So on the left side of the slide, you will see the different types of impairments. So for the physical, this is the most obvious one. So these are the ones with different limbs or amputees, those who had polio, or those with spinal cord injuries, those using wheelchairs. The sensory, these are the blind, the low vision, the deaf, and the hard of hearing, and combinations of those like deaf blind. For the intellectual, these are those with Down syndrome, autism, brain injury, etc. And for the psychological or psychosocial, we have those with depression, anxiety, or PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. And then when you have the impairment, I mentioned earlier that this has to interact with a barrier. So on the right side of the slide, you will see the different types of barriers. So the physical barriers are, again, these are the most obvious ones. For example, steps. If you're a wheelchair user, a step will be a barrier. That's an example of a physical barrier. For a social barrier, this is more on the attitude of the people around you. So the stigmatization, stereotyping, shaming, and isolation. These are attitudinal or social barriers. Next is the institutional barrier. This is the lack of clear policies or strategies that makes things inclusive. Some policies may not be explicitly excluding people, but somehow because of the lack of inclusive statements, they become exclusive of persons with disabilities. Next is communication barriers. So a lot of information are usually in written form, and most often these are not accessible for persons with disabilities. For example, for for the blind, for the low vision, these printed materials should be screen readable. So we have to make sure, like for example, our websites, our social medias, our posts, these need to be accessible for persons with visual impairments. Otherwise, this causes a barrier for them to get the information or to receive the information. For the deaf, the absence of sign language interpretation for them to understand the information. So that's a barrier if there is no sign language interpreter. Or for the hard of hearing, if there are no captions, for example, a show or a video presentation without captions, that's a barrier for the hard of hearing. So that's basically my discussion about disability. There's more to it, I'm sure, but I want you to read on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I will try to attach the link in the chat box so you can read it. You can learn more about the convention and the rights of persons with disabilities. Next slide, please. There. So this is another important topic that I want to talk about. Disability is always, it's like a twin of poverty. So let me explain why. So on the left side of this diagram, this is for persons who are living in poverty. So if you're living in poverty, you lack access to many things like safe working spaces, working environment. So if you work in an informal setting, there is a big possibility that you don't have the proper, let's say, insurances or safety features and stuff. So if you have that, if you're exposed to dangerous situations, there is a possibility that you become injured or you meet an accident leading to an impairment. Also, if you live in poverty, you don't have access to clean water, probably healthcare, no health services, or proper nutrition. And because of this, it's either you get sick. If you don't get proper nutrition, you get malnourished. If you're a child, there's a possibility that you'll have developmental problems later on. If you're a mother, if you're a pregnant woman and you're not getting healthcare, you're not getting proper nutrition, there is a big possibility that your child will have some impairments or developmental problems once he or she is born. So that's the relationship of when you live in poverty and disability. And then let me go to the right side of the diagram, the disability part. If you have a disability, there is a big possibility that you will live in poverty as well. So why? Because number one, there is a reduction of your access to many things. Like let's say, for example, rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is important for a person to maximize its functional capacity. So if you don't get a rehabilitation or because it's too expensive, you have to pay for it, you don't maximize your functional capacity, or you lose your resources because you don't have enough money to do it. Next is education. At least here in the Philippines, education is not at least inclusive education is not easy to have. Maybe there is an inclusive school somewhere else, not in your town. So maybe you can get the education, but you have to spend for so many things like transportation, like your guide if you're blind or you have low vision, or if you need a personal assistant. So you need to spend more to get that education, and most often than not, they just stop. So your function was not maximized, and now you don't have good education. There is a big possibility that you won't get a good job. It's a good thing if you can get training or something, but again, everything at least for in the Philippines, a lot of things are inaccessible. So you can't access a lot of things like training, capacity development. So most often than not, they don't get proper employment opportunities. They're not the environment is not accessible, and the persons with disabilities are not do not have the proper training and education to get that job. So if you have a disability, there is a big possibility that you will live in poverty. So this is what I wanted to highlight in this slide. Next slide, please. So let's go to the impact of climate change on persons with disabilities. So last year we did the research, and based on our research, these are our findings. Next slide. Threats to the family, no safe space. So what we found out is a lot of the families that we interviewed live in poverty, and they live in a very unsafe locations, and their houses are made of light materials. So every time there is a disaster, a storm in their area, they had to rebuild and rebuild. It's either the roof or the entire house. So they are trapped in that cycle of poverty and disability, because every time a disaster hits, they have to spend again to make sure that they rebuild their houses. Next slide. Healthcare, the last part of all. So again, as I mentioned earlier, these people either have at least one member with disability, and all of them are living in poverty. So health is something that is put aside. In this situation, there is a child with speech impairment who could have gotten a corrective operation, but the family opted not to do it, not because they didn't want her to get that operation, but because if the mother stops working, the entire family will stop eating. And of course, there is additional expenses for transportation, etc. And when we heard it so many times during the interview, that whenever their children are sick, they don't go to the doctor. They believe more on the 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 gossip around the community. Like for example, if the kids have fever, they feed them with orange soda and mint candy. So we were talking about this. I think that's more expensive than a paracetamol, but because of the mistrust to the healthcare service, they trust more the gossips that are happening around the community. Next slide, please. So next is strategizing for survival in an era of climate change. So if you can see here in the slide, you'll see that it's flooded in this area. So this is a normal day. This is not the storm season. This is an everyday situation in their area. But there's water, yes, but their well is dry. So for the family to get water, they have to travel to another town by boat, paddle boat, and it will take them an hour to get that water. So because water is so um hard to get, they have to make sure that they save up on every drop of water. So sometimes even if the kids are thirsty, they just skip drinking water just to make sure that they have enough for the following days. Additionally, because of the change in the climate, some jobs that they used to do before, like for example, getting coconuts, are very difficult now because it's hotter during the afternoon. So before they used to work the whole day, but now they just do it in the morning. So that means less money for the family. Next slide. This one is navigating disasters alone and excluded. As I mentioned during the quiz a while ago, there are no individual plans for evacuation for a lot of persons with disabilities. So in this situation, Glenda is a mother who has a physical disability. She has a child with a physical disability as well. So two of them cannot walk. And the husband or the father is the only one who can evacuate the entire family. So the government does not have any plan for her. Just it's a very common thing here in the Philippines. So it's the father who carries the child to a safe place, and then the mother next. So at one point, the mother was left alone. She felt a bit helpless because it was taking quite a while, and the storm was really strong. So she developed anxiety, and every time that there is an upcoming storm, um, she feels anxious and she feels scared. So I think the problem here is that the government is not helping out persons with disabilities. So this mother who only had a physical disability now has a psychosocial disability just because of the lack of support that she gets from the government. Next slide, please. Living with disabilities, the unresolved inequalities. So advocates and activists have been working towards disability justice for so long. But here in the Philippines, we have seen very small movement. I mean, if you can see this picture, it is a picture of a healthcare office, a healthcare clinic. If you can see, there's a ramp there. And what's weird about it is there's a step before you can get into the ramp. So it's either they don't understand what accessibility is or they just don't care. So in the Philippines, accessibility law has been here for 40 years, but this is how our ramps look like. So the issue of persons with disabilities or the disability sector has been put aside, not prioritized, even if there are so many persons with disabilities living in our community. Next slide, please. So with all that information I provided, how can we ensure that climate-related initiatives are designed and implemented to be fully inclusive of persons with disabilities? Next slide, please. So this one, the 4 pillars of disability inclusive development. So these are the 4 things that you should consider when you're thinking of making climate-related initiatives, may it be research, programs, activities, or whatsoever. Think of these 4 things: awareness, participation, empowerment, and accessibility. So for awareness, what does this mean? This means is awareness of the people in your organization, helping in sensitization campaigns for the community, for the policymakers, for the government. Next is the participation. What does this mean? Involve persons with disabilities in planning, decision making, in whatever programs you are planning to do. Seek for persons with disabilities, add them to your programs, consult them. If you have climate forums, climate seminars, webinars, involve them. Let them represent their sector. For the empowerment, provide leadership opportunities for persons with disabilities in your programs. If you're planning to provide a sensitization campaign in the community, why not include a person with disability and let them talk about disability? To empower persons with disabilities, we can also support them by providing them training, resources, and funding opportunities for their own projects. And lastly, accessibility. The information that you send out should be accessible. It should be readable. It should be accessible for all types of persons with disabilities. And also, if you're doing trainings, make sure that the venues that you are using are accessible for persons with disabilities. If, for example, infrastructure, evacuation centers should be accessible, shelter should be accessible, etc. Next slide, please. This is the precondition to disability inclusion. This is just like the 4 pillars that I mentioned right before this, but this is the expanded, some sort of expanded version. We'll send you a link to a document regarding the preconditions to disability inclusion. So the first one is equality and non-discrimination. Your organization should recognize persons with disabilities and their requirements. And the requirements differs from disability to disability. The needs of those with physical disability, of course, is different from those with visual impairment, etc., etc. And we have to promote the protection of persons with disabilities to make sure that they are not discriminated in situations, especially when it comes to our own programming. Next is accessibility. I mentioned this earlier. Accessibility of service points, accessibility of information, provision of sign language interpreters, easy to read versions of your documents, and screen readable materials. Next is participation of persons with disabilities. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to highlight that participation should really be participation, not just a tokenistic approach to it. Let's call them, let's invite them, and whatever they say, let's listen to their voice and consider their inputs. Next slide. The fourth is accountability and governance. So as governments are accountable to persons with disabilities, it's also worth mentioning that INGOs, NGOs are also accountable to persons with disabilities. Programming should include persons with disabilities. Next is the CRPD compliant budgeting. I mentioned CRPD a while back. This is the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So what does this mean, CRPD compliant budgeting? When we do programs, when we do any type of initiative, it will only come true if we have budgeted for it. So for something to be inclusive, we have to make sure that we budgeted for accessibility, for support services, and for reasonable accommodation. Otherwise, our efforts to plan for inclusion for persons with disabilities will not happen if we do not have enough money for accessibility, support services, and reasonable accommodation. And lastly, service delivery. I'm sure we provide services to different individuals. If we provide mainstream services, let's make sure that it is inclusive, and also let's provide disability-specific services for persons with disabilities. And also, we have to be ready to do disability assessment. When we gather data, we also have to have disability data, and we have to know how to gather this information so as to enable us to identify the needs of persons with disabilities. Next slide. To wrap up my presentation, human security is a multifaceted and interconnected issue in which inaccessibility and exclusion exacerbates vulnerabilities. By ensuring fulfillments of rights, accessibility, and non-discrimination, and the full participation of persons with disabilities, we can enhance resilience. Next slide. Salamat po. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carla and Yoon, for this very enlightening presentation. Thanks for shedding light and providing examples of how people with disabilities are proportionally affected by the impacts of climate change, sadly, and also recommending some solutions, at least on how to make our programs more inclusive. Are there any questions? Feel free to just open your mic or to raise your hand. We have a few more minutes for questions and answers from Carla and Yoon.
This is Yoon speaking. This is intentional. We're keeping quiet because we're giving you time to think, to ask questions. We have a question in the chat box from Aisha. Support ADHD in education. Maybe Aisha can open your mic and add to that. Please explain, or is that a question? That's a question mark, yes. Aisha.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Here in Jordan, we have a lot of people, youth in schools and university. They have ADHD and anxiety, and they are, as your classification, under disability. Okay, but there is a lot of lack of awareness in our community for this. Even the teachers and students, or even the teachers in schools and university, or the parents themselves. So we have a lot of cases, a lot of youth passed away suddenly, especially in the high school last year, which is called Tawjihi here in Jordan. Okay, no one know why, but recently I have some cases, I understand why. So we should focus on these youth. They have disability and anxiety and ADHD since they are children, but this grow with them. And after the COVID-19, a lot of them, it is spread a lot here in Jordan because they stay at home a lot, they sleeping a lot, and they are teenagers and they use the technology a lot. So they have their status become very complex and difficult. And doctors in the hospitals, they don't know they are ADHD or anxiety. It's too late to understand that, or there is a very gap between the community and parents and the doctors in hospital for this issue. I think this will take will consider a lot as care for children and climate and disability. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Carla. While waiting for Carla, Aisha mentioned during the COVID times, okay, though we can say everybody's experiencing that isolation, depression, and most of the time, always we're saying persons with disabilities, okay, were impacted worse than the community without disabilities. Additional needs are as services are interrupted. Services needed by persons with disabilities, like in this example mentioned by Aisha, for children with intellectual disabilities, with ADHD. Imagine the nature of ADHD. You are hyperactive. Then suddenly you'll be limited inside your room. How can you use that excess energy? Interventions like rehabilitation service. There's no limit. There's very limited person-to-person contact. That's disrupted service for children who need rehabilitation therapy services. Also, medicine supply. Yes, Carla, your mic now is open.
No, your answers are great, June. I have nothing to add. I don't actually know how to answer the question because it's very difficult to, what are we supposed to do to help these children during this time of like COVID times, and now that we are back on regular programming. So I think your answers are great.
Carla and June, there's one question in the chat, and time is flying. I can't believe it, but we're also running out of time a little bit. But I do want to ask you if you can answer Mary's question. Can you give us some tips on how you think climate activists and disability activists can work together?
Tips. So I'll get this from our own experience. So we are new in the climate action movement. We started last year. We got engaged because of CBM Global UK and CBM Global Philippines. They helped us out, and of course, I'm sorry, I forgot. Global Green Grants Fund. They supported our research, and then we all started with no knowledge of climate justice. But what we did was, because of the help of the INGOs, and also we were able to attend COP28. We met a lot of Philippine civil society organizations who are working in the climate arena. So we got connected there. We are inside now the network. So we really sought them, tried to be part of their group in order because we don't want to work in silos, right? So we wanted to work with other CSOs who are not focused on disability, but who will carry our advocacy if we try to, explain it to them. So now we are trying to be more participative in that network, trying to give our advocacy messages across so they will carry our messages as well as one network. So I think that's a very good way to start. And also we also started an activity wherein the people that we interviewed last year for the research, we are going back to their province this October, and we will be providing capacity building activities. We'll talk about disability, we'll talk about climate change, and then we will also help them start a climate action effort. It doesn't have to be big. It's just a small thing for their community, but we will make sure that it's their idea, not ours. So I think that's a good way to support their empowerment. Doc June, do you have anything else to add?
Since many persons with disability organizations have very limited budget, most of the time we are volunteers. Like Carla is volunteering always. Related to having capacity, resources, money to participate. We mentioned earlier disability-related cost of participation. You need to pay a personal assistant. You need to maintain you need to have an accessible transportation unit. But those are extra costs. Maybe organizations, funders can be open-minded, should be open-minded in analyzing the budget of activities, projects, okay, to be tolerant of accessibility and support need budget lines to ensure that persons with disabilities can participate in your programs, in your activities, looking for accessible venues. Usually it costs higher than the usual venues. Another thing about that, please help us. If the venues are not accessible, please inform the administrators. Make your facilities accessible. To continue on that, okay, the partnership support the capacity building of OPDs, Organization of Persons with Disabilities, and ensure that there's diverse representations, not just people with physical impairments, but those with what's that, visual, with low vision, hard of hearing, the deaf, the blind. It's easy to, not easy, but usually we get participants from the group of people with physical impairments. But let's be diverse. Try to have as many as possible coming from different impairment types. There's another question. Wait, I will remove something on my screen.
There's one more, and that can be the last question. And I'm sure if any of you have any other burning questions, then send them to us and we can forward them to Carla and Yoon. But there's one, what are the 2 or 3 main policy issues which we should advocate?
Maybe I'll go first now. Related to what I mentioned earlier, budget. CRPD compliant budgeting, disability responsive budgeting, including a budget of activities and in your interventions, budget for accessibility and support requirements of persons with disabilities. That will really mean a lot to ensure participation, and that will also facilitate empowerment of participating persons with disabilities. Carla?
I just want to add, for internal policy, I think it's also important to, for example, to include in your policy that there has to be like an intentional addition or participation of persons with disabilities. It has to be part of all programming. Like, everybody, all programs will include persons with disabilities. A certain percentage should be coming from that sector. I think it's a good addition to the internal policy.
Great. Many thanks, Carla and Yoon. Laia, can you go on to the next slide? I wish we had more time for questions and answers, but we tried for this to be sort of a short learning sessions for everybody to have a break in their day and to learn something new, perhaps. But this is the first one in our new alumni series. So we would love to get your feedback. If you scan the QR, you can just let us know what you think about the session. Laia, next slide. And of course, you can also connect with us, with the Academy, but also with Life Haven by visiting our websites. And we're also sharing the QR codes here. And maybe we can also share them again in the chat. And we will send this to you as well, together with the recording. Of course, if you have any ideas about future topics that we should cover in these learning sessions, please don't hesitate to let us know. We're hoping to run another Login and Learn event in January or February. Again, they're meant to be just short sessions where we have a guest speaker sharing something about their work or a recent publication, research, or study. Just for anybody who's interested to have a short break in their work and to learn something new. So feel free to send any suggestions and recommendations our way. Laia, I think that's it. You can move to the final slides, or there is no final slides. No, that's the same slide as before. Anyway, many thanks for all of you for joining, for Carla and Dr. Yoon. For being our guest and for preparing this presentation and filling all of us in, and wishing you all a great rest of your day, whether that's evening, morning, afternoon, and we'll be in touch. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Salamat po.
you. Bye.